Hello and welcome to Seminole Wrap, a podcast about all things Florida State. I'm Tim Alabal, and tonight I'll be joined by Tomahawk Nation contributing writer Juan Montalvo. We've got a lot of things to jump into. For a shorter podcast, it's off-season, so we are going to have some off-season talk. We're going to be talking recruiting, National Signing Day. The traditional one is right around the corner. And then we'll finish it up with some good old Florida State basketball. Open up a can of you-know-what on the Clemson Tigers. All that and more on this week's Seminole Wrap.
Just want to kick back on Seminole Wrap.
Better play the music.
As I mentioned in the opening, I am joined by my friend Juan Montalvo. Juan, how are you, buddy?
Tim, I'm doing pretty well. Took the baby to the beach for the first time today. He's a little over a year old, and he was like, "What is all this stuff around me?" The water was a little cold, so he was like, "What is this?" He enjoyed it though, so doing good. How about you, man?
Doing fine here. It's funny you talked about that. You're down there in Florida. I'm up here in Louisville, Kentucky. This morning we were greeted with first snow, then freezing rain, and now just cold rain. So not quite the beach, but it'll do.
Yeah, we wear shorts on Christmas down here. So we, in fact, that's a rule. This was the coldest Christmas we've had in probably, 10 years or something like that. Yeah. And I wore, it was, 50 something degrees and a little windy. So it felt chilly. But I was wearing shorts. No, I was wearing a parka, but I was wearing shorts under it because that's just what we do on Christmas down here.
Juan, if we had a Seminole Wrap Patreon account, fans could have heard about how long the inseam of your shorts is if they were on our pre-pod. So I'm glad we don't have that because that may have turned away some fans.
Yeah, you don't want to start talking about how short my inseams are and the views of bubblegum you can get. So let's move on from that.
Oh, man, it is the off season for Florida State football, which means sometimes there's not a lot to talk about and sometimes there is. We had a pretty good week of action going on because Florida State started their Tour of Duty workout. That's their off-season conditioning program. I don't know about you, Juan, but that's like when if I was a transfer, I would kind of be like, you know what? I'll just be a summer enrollee and miss that spring Tour of Duty. But I'm glad they got the players in there. I'm glad they're getting acclimated, and it's all part of Mike Norvell's culture changeover. Have you heard anything from Tour of Duty? Anything that you wanted to touch on there?
It's just good to see all these new arrivals getting in there. We'll talk about it later, but obviously Mackenzie Milton has been cleared. So, yeah, they're not doing contact or anything, and they're football adjacent drills like we talked about last week. So it's one of those things that, we're getting to the point where, all right, these guys are, getting back into the rhythm of the football cycle. So we're starting to warm up for spring practice, and it's just good to get back into the swing of things a little bit like that after a holiday season that felt pretty good. So, yeah,
we're starting to see the Instagram posts of people working out, how many plates they have on their out there that they're benching or squatting, but we haven't seen any Miami Hurricane chains pictures with shorts. So I think we're on the right direction so far with Tour of Duty.
We're also we're getting close to shirtless picture season and the inevitable breakdown that will come on let's say the bicep the diameter of Mackenzie Milton versus Tate Rodemaker. Very small biceps, the Tate kid.
I can't wait for our buddy Coach AB Adam Brown to do a overreaction piece on shirtless pictures.
Oh, it's already coming. It's already in the pipeline. The shirts are off. The gloves are off. It's coming.
We love you, Adam. I can't wait to see that one. But other off-season news this past week, we got the updated Florida State 2021 roster, which means we got number updates, Juan.
It's important. Let's start with the big man.
Yes.
DJ Williams, since he's number one. You got to start with the number one. So the new running back coming in from Auburn, DJ Williams, he's going to be wearing number one. King KZ, Mackenzie Milton, number 10. Number 10 is in soccer. It's the number that your playmaker wears.
Yep.
So, you want your number 10 to be the guy who's just putting all those beautiful passes out there for everyone to score based on. So it's appropriate, I feel like. Anything else stick up to you? We saw that Bryson Estes got 77, Jackson West 48. Anything else out there interesting for you?
Yeah, we had the defensive side of the ball also with I'm blanking on his name, the defensive end that everybody's super excited about.
Farmer?
No.
Oh, Jermaine Johnson
Out of the
too.
portal, yeah, Jermaine Johnson. He's going to be wearing 11. Keir Thomas is number 4. Jamie Robinson, number 10 on the defensive side. So we got the playmaker number coming out on both sides. We also saw, like you said, the new enrollees out of the high school recruiting class, like Joshua Farmer wearing number 96 and also Malik McLean, 11, Josh Burrell, 81. Uniform talk of any kind really gets the crowd or the fan base going. So I was glad to see that Florida State put out that updated roster. I'm excited about the number 10s on both sides, Juan, to see if they truly be the playmakers or truly are the playmakers that we're hoping they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, and you have I always enjoy seeing defensive linemen with low numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, you got someone like Keir Thomas, who's number 4. I mean, it reminds you of Timmy Jernigan wearing number 8 with his gut hanging out, just destroying dudes, mauling them at the line of scrimmage. That's what you really need from Florida State football. Gut hanging out, single digit. I mean, Eddie Goldman was a throwback. He wore a number 90. But you got to go with you got to love those single digit defensive tackle guys, especially when their guts hang out.
I mean, Timmy J's got, first off, an awesome name, Tim, but he's got to be one of my favorite Florida State defensive linemen of this decade. Just like you said, just an absolute beast. I love seeing the clip where he hip checks that Miami offensive lineman and doesn't get flagged for it.
Yeah, that was one of the great moments in FSU history, or at least in the Miami rivalry history.
Yeah. So excited about to see the players out there, especially when they get on the practice field, which leads to another thing. Spring game has been announced, April 10th. Florida State is planning on having their spring game. Hopefully all the COVID regulations will be in a good spot where they can have a good sized crowd show up. They can have recruits there. They can have on-site visits. And they can get a full spring practice in, something they didn't get last year. So I know Norvell and crew have got to be excited about that.
Yeah, the spring game's always something that once they release the date, you pencil it in on your calendar. In a normal year, you'd start thinking about, all right, should I think about going up to Tallahassee, make a weekend out of it? And, even though this is not a normal year and there's probably going to be less tickets available for the spring game, I'm going to bring out the criticism that Florida State deserves every year for not having baseball the same weekend at home as having the spring game. This year, they're playing up in your area of the world. They're playing at Louisville on the weekend of April 10th, from the 9th to 11th. And, it makes it a lot more exciting for the fans if you can manage to pair, a baseball game or two with seeing the spring game. So I just want to throw out my disappointment at that, which I do every year because it's just a frustrating thing for them to do. But it's going to be exciting to see, Mackenzie Milton is obviously the big headliner everyone wants to see. He's now clear for full contact. We'll talk about that again in a minute. Keep alluding to that one. But I mean, just seeing some of these new guys that have come in, some of the new signees, both the transfers and the high school kids, and just watching Florida State, play football, even if it's just a inter-squad scrimmage. It's just always fun to watch.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's going to be a brand new Florida State team. I mean, we talked about it earlier this week on the website. Since September, when the season basically kicked off for 2020, there's been over 26 roster moves, either for players transferring out, players transferring in, players going to the NFL that could have stayed another year. I mean, Mike Norvell is just totally overhauling this roster, flipping the culture, but also adding key players at key positions. And you better have your roster handy, because you're going to have to look at that to see who some of these players are, because there's going to be almost every transfer they brought in is expected to start or be an impact player. So you're going to have to learn these new numbers. There's people that are changing numbers. You're going to see more of the freshmen or the younger class playing on the offensive line. It's going to be a lot of names to learn, but it's exciting. That's what's most exciting, is you're seeing Mike Norvell being to execute a plan, COVID regulations willing, and you're going to get to see him execute his full spring practice, full spring game that he didn't get last year. And you're going to see a brand new Florida State team out on the field.
Yeah, and before we continue on talking about this, I just want to point out, Tim did write that article. It's on the website at tomahawknation.com, so feel free to check that out. It details all the 26 transfers in, out to NFL, et cetera. We're not going to go over every single one. Some of them are lesser players that didn't really make much of an impact. But obviously, you had some guys out, that were big names coming in. One of the biggest obvious ones is Jaden Lars-Woodby, who, while he was a very good Seminole, he did a lot of good things for the program in terms of, promoting it, being a good kid in the community, a good locker room kid by every account. Never quite lived up to his hype on the field. I think some of the injuries he had over his career sort of took their toll on him. And then, some other ones that were disappointing, like you losing LaDamian Webb. But then there was some issue that was a spot where you ended up getting some upgrades. Same with defensive back. I mean, you lose LaDamian Webb, but you bring in DJ Williams. You lose Jaden Lars-Woodby, but you bring in Brandon Moore and Jamie Robinson. So it's like, all right, there's I wouldn't say addition by subtraction. It's probably not fair to say that, especially with someone like LaDamian Webb. But there's some serious talent coming in, and just, roster overhaul, like you said. I mean, this is a completely different team than what was going to take the field for last year's spring practice. Obviously didn't end up happening. But this is, 26 transfer moves. And that doesn't, if I'm not mistaken, this doesn't include any of the high school signees. This is transfers, or does this include graduation as well?
We listed transfers and those that have announced for the NFL. That's what we
so this doesn't even necessarily include what's it called, graduating players or high school players coming in. I mean,
right.
If you were to start including those, I mean, you'd probably be able to bump this number up from 26 to 40 plus. Better.
Oh yeah. I mean, massively different team.
Yeah, and I think that's something that was necessary. And Mike Norvell may have been aided by COVID a little bit in this, because he isn't subject to the APR restrictions that that definitely limited Willie Taggart. Not that Willie Taggart managed the roster well, but he was definitely limited with what he could do due to the APR restrictions, coming in with Jimbo leaving behind the worst FBS program in Power 5 as with regards to APR. For those of you who aren't fully fluent in it, APR is academic progress rate. If you have a very low one below the NCAA mandated number 925, you can lose bowl eligibility or scholarships, or both. So it was a pretty perilous position that Jimbo left the program in. Willie did improve it somewhat, not as much as hoped. And fortunately, that particular restraint has been waived, and Mike Norvell's taken full advantage of it. I mean, Tim, what do you think about all this change?
I mean, he's taking full advantage is probably an understatement. I don't know how you would make that even more, but he saw this as an opportunity to say, basically, either get with us or get out. And best of luck to you, but we're not going to. I mean, I think the word we got through the season was there was a couple of key players that basically wouldn't get with the program. And he's like, no, not a problem. We'll clear out your locker and help you find somewhere else to go. We're not going to hold back for anybody. We're gonna flip this roster. The APR advantage is there for us. So let's take advantage of this while we can. And I mean, think about this in the spring game. Assuming everybody that's on the roster is going to play in the spring game, because not everybody always does. But at least going into 2021, the defensive line, Robert Cooper is the only quote unquote starter that's returning out of your front four. I mean, you're going to have a completely different defensive line. The wide receiver room is going to be completely overhauled. The backfield is going to have Corbin and Toafili, but you're adding Williams. You're probably, you're looking at Mackenzie Milton being your starter. On the defensive side, again, the defensive backfield, you've got Robinson and Moore. Moore's probably going to be your best corner on the team.
He's your boundary corner, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Norvell saw the writing on the wall that this team was going to struggle. And so instead of just bowing down to these players and trying to get the best out of those that were there and bending rules as some coaches done in the past to make allowances for rule breaking and rule violations. He's just like, no, this is the team. This is what our rules are. Either you follow them or we'll find somebody else. And that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, he's let quite a few people take a hike. I don't know how many have been pushed necessarily to do that. Like you mentioned, some have been. That's been alluded to with some of them, but yeah, it's wholesale changes, and I think that's a very positive thing for Florida State's football program, just based on what we've seen.
And the biggest thing is, I think, Mackenzie Milton, who we got news this past week that his doctors have cleared him for full contact football. I'm reading the article from Orlando Sentinel where basically the exact words were, if you had a game today, you could play. That they haven't seen a patient with these injuries recover like this, especially an athlete. So that's super encouraging just from his abilities, which, the guys over at Triple Option have done a great job breaking down Mackenzie Milton. His arm and his quick release are just kind of a quarterback coach's dream come true. But his off the field leadership is something this team desperately needs. He's going to walk into that quarterback room with Chubba Purdy and Tate Rodemaker. He's going to be a leader for them. He's going to give them an example to follow. He's going to be somebody that the team will listen to and respect. True freshmen like Purdy and Rodemaker, they kind of struggle with that sometimes. Not their fault, but it's just hard for a true freshman to come in and just command the leadership that somebody like Milton has. He's got the clout. Bringing his buddy Brandon Moore with him even adds even more leadership, because you're going to have a defensive dog that's going to basically back him up. The leadership is a huge factor for Florida State, because that's been a void for the last few years, or the leaders that you did have were people that you didn't want necessarily in that role. These are guys that have control of themselves emotionally, that can control the football field. And it's huge. Him being cleared to play, is opening the gateway for him to battle for that starter job, which everybody kind of expects, unless there's another step back. And you're changing the trajectory of Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who immediately changes what you think this program can do in the 2021 season. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you don't have anyone who has on the roster who has anywhere near his level of talent with his arm, at their proven talent. I mean, Chubba Purdy obviously is a high-powered recruit. Tate Rodemaker was Georgia's 6A player of the year for a reason. Those are two talented kids, and Jordan Travis is a heck of a runner. Not quite there accuracy wise with his arm, which is fine. I mean, you can look at Taysom Hill this year with the Saints for the last 4 years, I guess, as an example of what you can do with a guy like that. But really, just going back to Mackenzie Milton, one of the things that was interesting about hearing that it was cleared for full contact is, there were questions about his health and why he wasn't able to unseat the kid at the UCF.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name at the moment.
Don't ask me. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really annoyed by this because I've talked him up so much, because he's been really good. He threw for like 600 yards, which I've mentioned on every podcast that's been talking about. Dylan Gabriel. There you go. Yeah. It's annoying when I blank like that. But anyway, he threw for 600 yards in a game this past season. He, 3,000 yards in I think like a 9-10 game season. Long story short, even if he was fully healthy and didn't unseat Dylan Gabriel, that's not like a red flag. I mean, the kid's really good. To not be able to beat out a guy like that, especially because when you have someone who's out like that, if you're coming back from injury mid-year or late in the season, it's hard for a coach to bench a kid, for despite him playing well.
Right.
So, I mean, it hurts in the locker room, all that sort of stuff. So Mackenzie Milton, it's sort of, to me, answers some of the question of, was he really healthy? Obviously not. I mean, was he not good enough to beat Dylan Gabriel? I'm not sure it matters anymore. I mean, it's one of those things that Dylan Gabriel was really good, and, he wasn't necessarily ready to take full contact. And like you said, the doctors said that this is one of the quickest recoveries from this sort of injury they've ever seen. And so that's a big positive as well. Usually that's a good sign of athleticism, and hopefully it means he's able to play at the full level he was 3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago when they were playing for the UCF's national championship, quote unquote there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it can't be understated how big his impact is going to be to this team on and off the locker room. He's a guy, like you said, it commands respect. And one thing that gets talked about by Florida State fans and analysts alike is how much of that sort of impact Jameis Winston had on the 2013 team. I mean, you heard about the absolute wars that were had in 7-on-7s during the summer. I mean, those guys played more 7-on-7 probably that year than any other FSU program team has, and that's important because that builds chemistry between the players, the receivers, and it builds a team atmosphere. And, hopefully you start hearing a little bit of reports of that sort of thing. Coaches, don't hear anything about that, wink, wink. And they like to see it happen. They like to hear that it's happened, wink, wink. But they can't force the players to do that. And it usually, like we've talked about in previous podcasts, kids showing up for voluntary workouts, which are largely non-voluntary, but you can't really do much to enforce that. Kids showing up for those sort of workouts and putting the effort in and going and doing 7-on-7 during the summer, just on their own time, that's an indicator of a healthy program that's really turning itself around. And we heard positive things to that effect with regards to, voluntary workouts last year. And I think we're probably going to hear more about that this year, especially as we've got the tour of duty stuff going on. And hopefully we hear a little bit more about, summertime, quote unquote, unsupervised training. So,
yeah, I mean, in the end, a healthy McKenzie Milton is a game changer. If he truly is any shadow of his former self, that totally changes Florida State's offense. And I encourage those, like I said, triple options covered it some, but I encourage you to go out and just look up some of his highlights.
They're fun. He's a fun player to watch. Yeah.
I'll say one more thing before we jump to recruiting. I remember back in the lost decade, I think it was against USF, Christian Ponder had that rollout where he threw that deep bomb into the end zone that the guy caught right out of the end of the end zone, but it was just an unbelievable throw and on the run, and you're just, how did he get that out? McKenzie Milton makes throws like that all the time in his highlights where he's just rolling out and you're like, oh, there's no way he's going to throw this. And it just comes out of there so quickly like a cannon.
Yeah, his release is just ridiculously short. And, he watching, Mahomes earlier tonight, obviously I'm not going to compare those two. Patrick Mahomes is going to be possibly one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. He's already up there in terms of what he's done. But Mahomes is known for what he can do with changing arm slots, the side angles that he can throw from on the run. And I'm not sure that McKenzie Milton necessarily has that level of arm talent, of course. But he's very good at rolling out and throwing on the run, which is going to be an important component of this offense, I think.
All right, so traditional signing day for recruiting is, I think, a week and a half away at this point, the first Wednesday in February. It's right around the corner. Right now, I think everybody expects Florida State to sign Destin Hill, the wide receiver out of Louisiana.
Destin Fat Pays on Hill or whatever it is this week.
Yeah, the kid's an absolute stud.
Oh, yeah.
Stud. And other than that, I don't at this time, I don't expect Florida State to sign anybody else. Tywan Malone is the other guy, defensive tackle. He's really
I'm trending for him. Yeah.
Ole Miss. He just visited Ole Miss this past weekend. He's really
a visit high that's coming into those interviews, but it seemed like it's been trending A&M despite the relative lack of a baseball program.
I'll say this: the thing that he's really connected with at Ole Miss, which is going to sting for Florida State fans, is Plumlee and him seem to have really hit it off. The quarterback that Florida State chased at the end of the cycle a couple years ago.
One of my favorites too. That's watching him not play in favor of Matt Corral is even more frustrating.
Well, then watching him play wide receiver and and just being out there on the field anywhere, it's frustrating. But so that could be a big factor in his recruitment. So I think he's going to go to an SEC school. Florida State's baseball program, if for some reason Florida State wins this recruitment, it's because of their baseball program. That's my opinion. Other news, 2022 four-star quarterback out of Arizona, Nico Marchiol, was on campus this past weekend. He did the Florida tour. He went and saw the Gators. He went and saw Florida State. Both Florida and Florida State are in his top group. I don't know what to say there. Like, they were really hot on Marchiol for almost a year. And then now we've seen a flurry of other quarterback offers going out over the last month for Florida State. And Marchiol's been showing up wearing Florida gear here and there. It wouldn't shock me to see him go to either school, Florida or Florida State. But it was good to get him on campus at his own dime. But another name to know, Juan, is MJ Morris, four-star quarterback out of Georgia, somebody that I would love Florida State to land personally. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks this cycle and would be a home run for Florida State. Our own Josh Pitt caught up with him this past week. He's supposed to get on campus here either this upcoming week or another one. He's got some scheduling conflicts with practices, but that's huge news to get 2 four-star quarterbacks on campus during this COVID downtime. So exciting that Florida State is making a run at some of these big-name quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, and not just the quarterbacks, but in general, getting prospects on campus. That was one complaint that we sort of had. I don't know about complaint, but a criticism that was sort of being leveled at the staff was, you were seeing a lot of these other schools able to get folks on campus, and Florida State kind of struggled with that for a while. But now, hey, I mean, like you said, 2 4-star quarterbacks on campus in the last couple, in the span of a few weeks is really good. And MJ Morris is, he's out of Carrollton, that is suburban Atlanta area, and it's never a bad thing to have a team leader from that part of the world. In this day and age, there's so much talent that comes out of Atlanta area that having a kid from there is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, pair him with Travis Hunter out of Georgia as well. And you have now basically captured 2 of the top 10 players out of the state of Georgia, and Georgia's just a football factory, and you're battling Bama and Georgia and Clemson for all those guys. So to pull both of those would just be a massive win.
Yeah, at that point you've got an offensive bell cow and a defensive bell cow, both out of Georgia. So
oh yeah, I'm excited about Hunter. I'd be equally excited about Morris. So a lot of positive momentum there if they were to secure that signature. But going into signing day, like I said, we're expecting Destin Hill, unsure about Malone. That leaves Florida State with one more spot that we have confidence in. Hill would put them at 25. We believe there's that one extra spot from last year. Most are hoping for an offensive tackle, and most thought their hopes were coming true this past week when the Tennessee volunteer exodus began. You had the running back Gray, you had Crouch, you had Couch, and you had Tuatua, the linebacker, who would be awesome to land. And then also you had offensive tackle / guard Jameer Johnson. Alex Atkins immediately got that follow back on Twitter. The fan base is kind of in a frenzy. If Trey Rowland was on here, he would talk about, you would see Noel Daddy 69 following Jameer Johnson now on Twitter. All excited. But one of our sources kind of echoing what some of the other sites have said is that doesn't look like Florida State's going to go in hard for Jameer Johnson. There's a lot of competition there. The staff has been pretty picky about offensive tackle. And if it's not somebody that can make a huge impact, they're not necessarily going to go all in on him. So at this time, from everything I'm hearing, and again, to echo what other sites came out with earlier today, I don't think Jameer Johnson is going to end up at Florida State.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we're going to benefit from Pruitt's downfall. So unfortunately, that's not what Florida State's going to be pulling in And I really think that the need necessarily for an offensive tackle is a little bit overstated. And I think a big part of that is a lot of people seem to be talking about moving in Devontae Love-Taylor to guard. I don't see why. He's a perfectly acceptable, pretty solid, really, college offensive tackle. Is he an offensive tackle in the NFL? No. But guess what? We're not playing NFL. We're playing college football. And I think that's one thing that you run into when you hear a lot about those sort of comments is really folks are looking at him and his NFL type potential rather than what he's actually doing now, which is playing college football at Florida State.
Yeah.
So I think that if you look at Devontae Love-Taylor as a left tackle or as a tackle, which he should because that's what he is, you don't really have that many issues as far as depth goes. So.
Yeah, Robert Scott on the right side, Darius Washington backing up both of them. They've got this unit that's kind of cross-trained now where they can play multiple positions. I think having a true left tackle would be a benefit, definitely. But if for some reason they come out of this offseason without one, it's not going to be, 2019 Florida State where they,
right.
They're just crushing James Blackman. Highlights.
Don't get me wrong. If you can hit a home run, get a guy like a Jameer Johnson or somebody like that, a first round type caliber kid, you go get him. It doesn't matter what position. But that guy isn't out there that we've seen so far, and there hasn't really been anyone that's that level. That's better than replacement level. And right now, where they are with their depth, they clearly seem to be, okay with it. They're not too worried about it. And I have full confidence in Alex Atkins and this staff to evaluate what they've had because of what we talked about earlier, the mass exodus, the 46 movements that we've seen on this team. They've evaluated this roster. They've evaluated these guys and decided, all right, these guys can play. These guys can't. But keep these guys, move these other guys on, and guess what they haven't brought in? Offensive tackle. And they're very active in the transfer market. So I think the need that's for an offensive tackle is overstated. For every time we post a new transfer or a new commit, it's like all the comments on Facebook or Twitter, it's like, can he play offensive tackle? Can he play offensive tackle? Like even for like defensive backs, like it's become a joke at this point. Like, can he play offensive tackle? It's like, guys, they don't really necessarily need to get someone. And don't get me wrong, if they can sign a 5-star offensive tackle into a class, that's one thing. If they can get a transfer first round level type guy, sure. But that's just not out there. I mean, it'd be great if it was, but it's just not.
Yeah, if they end up pocketing this last scholarship from traditional signing day, let's say Malone doesn't end up coming here, and so you just get Hill. They still have a long time if they want a tackle, they can find one. I think that Devin Cochran last year came out late, went up to Georgia Tech, several other players. So it's not the end of the world if they don't sign one in the next 2 weeks or use this other scholarship. They'll have plenty of time to evaluate and find other players. As the spring semester ends, you'll have more players going into the portal. So,
and of course, they just extended signing date to August 1st, I think.
I think it's all the way till next year at this point.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think when I saw it was February, whatever, till August 1st is what it's going to be this year, which is just wild to think about that.
I made a joke in our Slack chat. Oh gosh, Dustin Hill's never going to sign now.
Yeah, he's
had
going
so many opportunities.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, but let's transition to one last topic before we call it a night. FSU basketball is on a roll, to put it lightly. Smoked NC State, beat North Carolina, went into Louisville, beat a really good Louisville team, and this past weekend just absolutely annihilated Clemson, a ranked Clemson that already beat them once this year. The final score was 80-61, but at one point it was like a 35-point lead before they put in the third string, everybody. I think you and I could have got some minutes in that game one. It was just an absolute
5-foot walk-ons were in there playing.
Absolute blowout by Florida State and in impressive fashion.
Yeah, and it's a fun team to watch too. I mean, they are offensively one of the best teams in the country. And if you guys need to listen to the podcast, the Tomahawk Nation basketball podcast with Matt Minnick and Mike Rogner. And I'm sure Matt is going to talk about this even further, but since January 1st, there has not been a better offensive basketball team in college basketball. So you've got a really, really fun team. Make sure to watch them every opportunity you get. Florida State's team last year was maybe a little better overall, and especially defensively, but and they didn't get the opportunity to go play, obviously, in the NCAA tournament. Hopefully this one will. It sounds like they're going to get it done all in Indiana. But this is a team that, it's playing its best basketball, and, they're playing really well, and they're fun to watch.
Yeah, I like you said, we'll let Matt really get into this more when he talks about it. But the gap between 1 and 2 is massive. Florida State has just been shooting the lights out, and that's without Scotty in a couple games. It's without Anthony Polite in a couple games. But it's crazy to see Raekwon Evans stepping up the way that he has. That was an unexpected benefit. Calhoun's finally having shots fall. I think he ended up with 3 threes against Clemson. Wyatt Wilkes is starting, and he's not a liability. He's doing a great job on offense. He had an impressive block, even did the Mutombo finger wag afterwards. So, and I got to tell you, something that's exciting for me is I love seeing Balsa out there. He had that drive against Clemson where he drove, took a shot, missed it, got his own rebound, and dunked it right back in. It's one of those plays you just love to see big guys do. But he's been impressive out there. MJ Walker, when he doesn't get elbowed by his own players, is doing fantastic. Scotty Barnes coming off the bench. I could just go on and on. This team is just absolutely crushing it. Raekwon Gray, everybody. This is a very fun team to watch. They had that's kind of the drought there against UCF and Clemson earlier in the season, and you're almost like, oh, do I really want to tune in every game and watch Florida State go on a 6-minute drought of not scoring? Like the past. And then it just seems like since they kind of came back from that COVID break, they've just been on fire.
Yeah, they've been crazy to watch. Like you said, it's not exactly it's nothing like one of those 2008, 2009 Hamilton teams that were 4 possessions a game and winning games 51-48. They're out there flying, and you gotta always love watching a guy like Balsa. Serbian dude, 7 feet tall. It's just, I always enjoy that.
He's got skills for a guy that size that are impressive, because he's not awkward when he's got the ball or when he's going up for a dunk. Which, you hate when you get those big 7'1" guys that have a lot of talent, but they're just kind of awkward, maybe jumping up because they're just not used to such length.
Like Bojo's first year.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see that with Balsa. He's really came on strong. This whole team has really come on strong. And honestly, you don't expect them to keep it up, but when they shoot the lights out from 3 like they have been, they'll smoke anybody in the nation almost.
Oh yeah, it's not necessarily sustainable to be that good from 3, but there's no doubt this is a very, very good offensive team.
Yeah, hopefully we just didn't jinx them this week and they won't lose to Miami. But
knock on wood.
But I'm excited about this team. They're a lot of fun to watch. If you haven't caught any of their games this year, turn it on, especially in the first half. That's when they're really flying around.
Yeah, they vaulted up to 12th in KenPom. Pretty quickly, because they were not that high before. So.
Yeah, unranked Florida State right now. Unbelievable.
Yes.
One of my favorite Twitter follows is a Florida State fan by the name of C. Steph. He goes by Slowdell Higgins out there. He does follow the follows all the time. He mentioned yesterday on Twitter, if you look at the resumes against some of these top 10 teams that have the same record as Florida State, or worse, what their resume is not near as impressive as what Florida State has done against the teams they've played. Just the preseason polls, the preseason name hype of some of these teams are why they're above Florida State. I think this week, especially, Florida State finally is getting the recognition that they deserve, and we should see them make a pretty good jump into the polls this week.
Yeah, blowing out a number 16 Clemson team, if they somehow don't sneak up from 29th into the top 25, I'd be shocked.
Well, the Florida State fan base will burn down Twitter if that doesn't happen.
Even more so than normal.
Well, Juan, it's been fun catching up with you. It's nice getting back to a little bit of normalcy. Looking forward to what this week has for Florida State. The next time we talk will be on the Sunday before signing day. So should be exciting. I know it's a little, the early signing day has really kind of taken some of the steam out of the traditional signing day. But if Florida State,
it used to be so much more fun.
Oh my gosh.
I remember the National Signing Day 2012 when you had, I think it was the Jameis Winston class of Darby, and you had all those guys. You had a bunch of them announced that day. Goldman was that day. I'm trying to remember who else.
I just remember Goldman, Darby, and those being the ones that were quote unquote uncertain. Was Edwards? Was Mario Edwards that class too?
No, yeah, he was, but he was sort of committed the whole time. But really.
But there was some. Willie said,
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing happened with Jameis. He was on ESPN, I think the day before, or something like that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it was like a holiday. You could take the day off from work and just see what was going to happen, and it was exciting. So some of that's gone, but trust me, it'll all be worth it to see Destin Hill finally, hopefully, make that commitment come true to Florida State.
Either then or on August 1st.
Anywhere in between, but anyways.
As long as he signs.
Exactly. Juan, it's been fun. So as always, I'll leave this part up to you.
Well, most importantly, so just make sure you have your July 4th plans centered around Top Gun 2.
Juan, all I wanted was for you to say, that's a wrap.
And that's a wrap.